Hello and welcome to the Coming Down to Earth with Spirit podcast with me, your host, David Hale. In the podcast, we'll be talking about mediumship and all things spiritual in a down-to-earth and honest kind of way, with a touch of humour also. So I hope you can join me on my podcast journey so you can learn from my own spiritual journey and experiences with spirit in the aim to help you on your own spiritual journey, or it may just be to answer any of those questions that you have about the spiritual world. So join me now as we get into this episode. So I wanted to start off my podcast with, by turning a video series that I've recently started on YouTube into a podcast so people can listen rather than having to watch a video of me talking. And I started the video series with the aim of educating people who are either learning to be a medium or just people who want to know about the spiritual world, what happens, what is mediumship, how does it work, by discussing my own examples and real life experiences with spiritual moments or readings that I've done for other people. So hopefully you'll find the episodes entitled Spiritual Impacts interesting, and you will hear me referring to the video. Of course, this is a podcast, so you don't see a video, but it does reference the videos that I have now turned into this podcast. But if you do feel inclined to actually watch me talk about these topics, you can go to my YouTube channel, which is davidh_medium, but the content is exactly the same. Let's get into this episode. And I think it's probably sensible and a good idea for the first video is to go back to one of the very first readings that I did, which had an impact on me. So this goes back to 2017, and I was only into my first official year of development as a medium. And one of the lovely ladies I used to work with, she allowed me to use her as a guinea pig whilst I was still practicing. And going back to 2017, I was still a little bit undisciplined, where I would still be learning how to shut off spirit and how to open up to them and all that kind of stuff. So we were at work, and she used to sit on the desk behind me, and we'd already prearranged that after work we would sit together and I'd give her a practice reading, with me not knowing what I was going to get, if I was going to get anything at all, didn't really know what I was doing, but she agreed and understood that as well, so those expectations were set there already. So as I sat there at my desk trying to get on with my own work, I felt a gentleman step forward, an old gentleman who I could see in my head, and I thought, who is this? What is going on? And I figured out afterwards that the only reason he stepped in was because I was already in my head about doing this practice reading, which I was nervous to do because I didn't know if I was going to look stupid, because what was I going to get? I don't know if I was going to get anything at all. So my mind had already sent a thought out to spirit to go, right, I'm connecting to this lady, I'm worrying about it, what do I do? And he stepped in. Anyhow, as I sat there, I knew it was an older gentleman who felt like a grandfather. That's just a feeling I had. And so I got my notepad and pen that I had next to me. I took the pen and I thought I better write these things down, otherwise I'm going to forget what I'm being shown here. And I had a feeling it was for the girl that I was doing the reading with later. She was sat behind me. So I wrote down what I was seeing. So I saw an old gentleman who I felt was a grandfather. He made me aware of issues in my chest, because I felt that he had breathing issues, couldn't breathe properly. And look, I know we all fail to breathe towards the end of our life, right? That might sound quite obvious, but I felt there was an issue with the lungs, like something that not OCD. What's it? Emphysema and POCD, not OCD. You know what I mean? I won't cut that. No, I won't cut it. I'll leave it in because it shows this is real, right? This is not me editing myself. Anyhow, I felt that, and then he showed me August. I got August in my head, and I saw smoking, and I felt like I smoked like a chimney, so I wrote that down. Oops, not the microphone there. What else did I see? I then saw I saw grapes, and I felt like I was in some kind of vineyard somewhere. And then I saw a fishing boat, and I thought, well, this is all a bit too random here. But I wrote it down, and I thought, no, I'll write it, and I'll see what happens afterwards. So anyway, fast forward to the end of the shift, and we went into a room, and we sat down. And she didn't give much away, and that's not. And clients shouldn't give much away anyway. Obviously, there needs to be that communication, but she wasn't feeding me anything. So she sat there, and I just quite honestly said, right, I feel like I've got your grandfather in spirit. That's what it feels like to me. So she nodded and acknowledged, and then I said, I felt like he was a really heavy smoker because my chest felt funny. I could see smoking, and I feel like I got an issue like emphysema. To which, and at that point, her eyes kind of widened and kind of realising that I've got something here. She confirmed that yes, he smoked like a chimney all the way to the end, and he did end up passing of emphysema. So I've sat there going, okay, and I started not freaking out, but I started going, what's going on here? Because I was still new, I was still trying to figure out, what am I doing, what am I seeing, am I right? So then I said to her, I've got the month of August, to which her face started to change a little bit more, and said, yes, he passed in August. And then I said, I saw something really odd. I saw things like a grapes that I felt like it was a vineyard, and then I was shown a fishing boat. Do you know what that is? To which, to her surprise, and also to my surprise, because I didn't know I was going to get anything right, she said yes. Said when it came to his retirement, he sold the vineyard that he had, and that vineyard has a memory for her because as a grandchild of his and her cousins used to go to the vineyards every summer. He used to take them through the vineyards. But when he retired, he sold that vineyard and bought a fishing boat. So, as you can probably imagine, I was a bit gobsmacked by that because, again, I wasn't a professional medium at that point. I was just practicing. I didn't know what I would get. So, and she gave me, and long story short, she acknowledged the other things that I said, which I can't remember now because it's so long ago. And she said, can I give you a hug? She gave me a great big hug and thanked me for bringing that information through, and it gave her comfort. And that's the point. It gave her comfort. It wasn't about me proving, oh, look what I can do. It's about giving her comfort and just allowing her, or she allowed me just to practice what I was trying to develop on as well. So that had a massive impact for me because it was that moment that I realised that, you know, I have got something. I don't know yet what that something is, but at that point I thought, you know, I'm gonna take that. I'm going to reflect on it, and I'm going to try and keep building this ability and keep working on it. Now, you might say that, you know, some of the things that I got through, like, it might seem quite mundane, but when you look at it, those are specifics. Those are specific things related to her grandfather. And look, yes, we all die of certain conditions, right? There's only a certain amount of conditions we can die from. And, you know, and there are going to be similarities. You know, your grandfather might have died from emphysema, but I'm not talking about your grandfather. I'm talking about her grandfather. And that's exactly what he passed from. So it's those little bits of evidence that we need, and obviously back then they're just little like tidbits there that I got. Now I wasn't in the full flow of doing a reading like I would be now. They were just little bits that was dropping into my head. So what's the lesson here for you? So if you're going through your own development and you're new on your path to mediumship, it's learning to trust yourself with what you get put in your head, because that at that time, that's how I was receiving the information. I was receiving things visually in my mind, so that's your clairvoyance, and when we could do another video on that at some point. But you have to learn to trust what you're getting, but don't push it. Don't beat yourself up if you don't get something in a certain way. And when you do get things right, it's okay to celebrate it and go, oh, do you know what? I got that right. There's so many things out there in the spiritual world where there's a slight everyone mentions the ego, and agreed, I'm not a fan of egoic mediums, and they do exist. Like, look at me, I'm so special. We're not. We're just ordinary people with an ability, right? And because the ego is talked about so much, we're sometimes afraid to celebrate the evidence that we get, and we're afraid to say, look how great that reading was. Do you know what? Sometimes we have to say that, because that helps us to reflect on what we do. Because in mediumship, look, we beat ourselves up a lot, right? We're our own worst critics. There's no one harsher on ourselves than us. So we have to reflect on those readings and go, do you know what, that's fabulous. And I always go back to that reading, because again, it was the start of something. We should always reflect on where we started and how we came and how the journey takes us. Because, you know, if you're at the beginning of your mediumship now and you're receiving things similarly to how I received at the beginning, give it a year and that will be different. Your senses will change. You'll receive information in different ways or extra ways. So embrace what you're doing. Trust what's being put in your head. Don't beat yourself up if you don't get something completely right. Even if it's just you might get a grape in your head. Again, that's where we start. We start off with those small things and we build up to it eventually with the more experience that we have. So now, if you get those little things put in your head, they're there for a reason. So accept them, acknowledge them, and we take them, and they will grow eventually into bigger pieces of evidence. But there's always a starting point. All right. So that's that video. So that's just a little thing I want to touch on, because that particular reading did impact me, because it was one of the first readings that I did where there was some acknowledgement of, oh, I've got something going on, not sure yet, and it started my journey into mediumship. So there you have it. That's that episode finished. Hopefully you enjoyed what you heard, and if so, there are plenty more episodes in the Spiritual Impact series to come. So do stick around if you're interested in learning more from my own personal experiences with spirit. Once again, you can find the videos on YouTube if you wish to watch me talk about it. Otherwise, please stick around with the podcast and you can download the episodes and listen until your heart's content. But until then, look after yourselves, and hopefully I'll speak to you all soon.